Our application is definitely working, but as we mentioned in the last video, a user can potentially change the value of red, green, or blue very far beneath 0 or very far above 255. That's not a very great user experience, because then if they wanted to then change the color once again and actually see a visible result, they would have to tap on a button many, many times to get it beneath 255 again or above 0. So in this video, we're going to make sure that we put in a check before we ever change one of our colors inside of any of these different callbacks. We're going to make sure that changing the value will not increment or increase the value above 255 or beneath 0. Now, there are many different ways that we could approach this problem. I'm going to first show you one way that's pretty darn obvious on how we could approach this, but maybe it's not going to be the best way of solving it. Nonetheless, I want to show you the most obvious way and tell you why you might not want to use this approach. Okay, so here's the obvious way. We could find all of our different color counter functions and find all their different on increase and on decrease callbacks. We could then expand the callbacks we're passing in. So I'm going to add in a set of curly braces around my function body here for the first one. The reason I'm adding in that extra set of curly braces, so there's the first extra one right there, and the second extra one right there, is that I want to add in some amount of code more than what we currently have inside of here. If an arrow function just has a single expression, as we do right here, we do not have to have those curly braces. But because I want to add in some more logic inside of here, well, now we need to add in the curly braces. Okay, so now inside of here, we could add in a if statement check right before we call setRed. So I could say if red plus color increment would end up with the value greater than 255, then return early. So essentially, hey, if we're going to go above 255, get me out of here. I don't want to actually call setRed. Now we could add in a very similar check to on decrease, but make sure that if we subtract color increment, we don't go beneath 0. Now, why is this not a great approach? It would definitely work, I can tell you that, but I would say it's not a very good approach because if we add in all this extra logic to every single callback inside this file, not only are we going to have a lot of pretty repeated code, but we're also going to make it really hard to read the JSX that we're returning here. Because not only are we putting in some amount of code related to the different elements we want to show on the screen, but we're also mixing in a ton of business logic. So it would become pretty challenging to really understand what's going on inside of this entire component. So I think that although this would work, it's probably not the best solution. So I'm going to undo this change. We're going to take a look at maybe a slightly better way of handling this. So I think that maybe a better way to deal with this kind of validation logic without adding in a ton of logic to all of our JSX directly would be to make a little helper function right above our JSX block. So right here, I'm going to make a new helper function called setColor. So we're going to use this setColor function to decide what color we want to update. We'll then do a quick validation on the update. And then if we don't go above 255 or below 0, then we'll go ahead and actually make the update. I want to try using the same setColor function for all three of our different colors, red, green, and blue. So to make sure that we can handle all three different colors, I think the first argument to this function right here should be some string that describes what value we're trying to change. I'm going to refer to that argument as color. So just to be really clear, I'll put a comment to myself right here. Color is going to be equal to red, green, or blue as a string. So we're going to use that to decide exactly what color we're trying to change. Then as a second argument, I'll add in change. Change right here is going to be the amount that we want to change that color by. So essentially either plus color increment, which would mean plus 15, because that's what color increment is equal to, or minus color increment, which would be negative 15. So I'm going to add in a second comment here to myself and say change is going to be essentially either plus 15 or minus 15. So now with this function, we can inspect color, we can decide whether or not we're trying to update red, green, or blue, and then we can see if the change would push us above 255 or beneath 0. Let me show you what that would look like. So we could say if color equals red. Then inside of here, we know exactly what we're trying to change. So we can add in some logic inside this if statement to specifically check the value of red. So now inside of here, we could say if red plus change would be greater than 255, or if red minus change would be less than 0. excuse me, the second one right here, I just made a mistake. That should be red plus change as well. The reason it's plus change is that we're going to have change right here be either plus 15 or minus 15. So red plus a negative 15 would decrease our value of red. So we want to have red plus change greater than 255 and red plus change less than 0. There we go. So if that would push us out of our bounds right here, then we don't want to make this update, and we could simply return early. Otherwise, if we get past that check, so we could maybe add in an else statement right here. So if we get past that check, then we can go ahead and commit the update, in which case I would call set red, and I would do red plus change. All right, so now we can use this set color function in place of set red right here. Let's try testing out red first, and then we'll add in some additional cases to deal with green and blue as well. So to make use of that new function, I would call, instead of set red, I would do set color. I would pass in red as an argument, and then do simply color increment. And then I can update on decrease as well. So set color, red, and this time I'll do -1 times color increment. Now, do double check, make sure you've got set color on both these function calls. When I wrote out this example, I accidentally put set red here on the second one. That was a mistake on my part, and I very quickly saw a error message on my application. So make sure you've got set color on both of them. So let's now save this and test it out. I'll go back over to Square Demo. Now I'll increase my red, and at a certain point, I can still see that it's like definitely very red here, and if I still tap, it's not getting any more red. So at this point in time, I'm probably at my 255 limit. If I start to click on decrease red, I'll see that it changes color right away. So I think it's pretty obvious that we definitely capped the value of red there. And once again, if I go very far past black, so I'm definitely black right here, red is definitely 0 at this point, or very close to 0, and if I keep tapping on decrease red, I, in theory, could be going down very far beneath 0, but we've got some logic to cap the negative value of red. So if I now start to tap on increase red, it becomes red right again as well. So I think that our logic right here is working out pretty well. There's just one more little issue. Although we've got some working logic right here, well, it's kind of hard to read what's going on. So there actually is a structure or a little bit of syntax we could use inside of JavaScript to clean up the code we have here just a little bit and make it a little bit more obvious what's going on. So let's take a quick pause here. When we come back in the next video, we're going to add in a check for green and blue. Then we'll also clean up the code that we're writing here and use a slightly more appropriate structure than what we currently have. So quick pause, and we'll take care of that in the next video.